What if the hero who once stood as the moral backbone of the Avengers returns not as a savior, but as the catalyst of their greatest downfall? And what if the face behind this collapse isn't Captain America, but Steve Rogers, reborn as Nomad, standing side by side with Dr. Doom? Welcome back to Movie Cast, hosted by Liam Harrison, and today we're diving into one of the wildest, boldest, and most chilling theories sparked by the brand new Avengers Doomsday trailer. The trailer didn't just tease the return of Steve Rogers. It practically screamed a secret message hidden in plain sight. A message that says the man we thought we knew isn't coming back the way we expect. So let's start peeling back the layers, one by one, to reveal how Marvel may be setting up Steve Rogers not as the returning Captain America, but as the broken wanderer known as Nomad, and why he may have no choice but to walk in the shadow of Dr. Doom. The trailer begins deceptively soft, pulling us into a quiet corner of Steve's life that we thought ended peacefully after Endgame. We see Steve riding a motorcycle toward a familiar little house, the same peaceful home where he chose a life with Peggy. He places his helmet gently on the handle, almost like he doesn't want to disturb the serenity he built for himself. Inside, he holds his child, smiling with a warmth that feels too perfect, too fragile, too temporary. And then the screen cuts sharply to a text that feels like a seismic shift. Steve Rogers will return in Avengers Doomsday, not Captain America, not the Sentinel of Liberty, not Earth's best soldier, just Steve Rogers. That tiny wording choice is Marvel's loudest whisper. Because this isn't the triumphant comeback of a superhero, it's the return of a man who walked away from the shield, the mantle, and the war. And when a man like Steve returns without the shield, it means he's coming back as someone else entirely. The wording of that trailer tag is the first major crack in the facade. Marvel always uses the mantle when it matters. Thor will return. Spider-Man will return. Captain America will return. They've used it time and time again. But this time, they chose the man, not the hero. And that distinction isn't accidental. Because Steve Rogers returning does not automatically mean Captain America returns with him. The next shot cements this idea even further. Steve standing in front of his old Captain America suit, the Endgame suit, iconic and battle-worn. There's no music, no nostalgia, just a quiet, heavy stare. It's the kind of stare a person gives to a life they know they can never go back to. Then Steve closes the box, sealing away the suit, the past, and everything Captain America ever stood for. This isn't a man preparing to reclaim his identity. It's a man burying it. And that's the exact emotional pivot Marvel needs to introduce his next form, Nomad. The identity Steve once adopted when he walked away from the American government, from the system, from everything he believed had betrayed him. In the comics, Nomad wasn't just a costume change. He was Steve at his most conflicted, most disillusioned, most dangerous. Nomad was born out of betrayal, a moment when Steve realized the institutions he fought for were corrupted from within. He abandoned the flag, the title, and the shield, choosing instead to fight as a man without a nation, without allegiance, and without boundaries. Nomad was Steve unleashed. And now, in the Doomsday timeline, Marvel might be using this persona again, but this time, the betrayal isn't coming from the government. It's coming from reality itself. Steve has lived a peaceful life, one the multiverse could easily erase. A life filled with love, a family, a timeline that should not even exist. And someone like Dr. Doom, master of time, space, and manipulation, knows exactly how to weaponize that vulnerability. The return of Nomad isn't just a cool Easter egg. It's a psychological transformation. It's the rebirth of a man who is forced to abandon everything he stood for just to keep holding on to the only thing he has left, his family. Now comes the darkest part of the theory. Why would Steve ever stand beside Dr. Doom? The answer lies in the very scenes Marvel chose to show us. The presence of Steve's child, the peaceful home, the quiet domestic life. This isn't just world building. It's motive. Doom is not a villain who simply fights. He controls. He manipulates timelines, realities, and destinies. And Steve's timeline with Peggy is one of the most fragile branches in the multiverse. Doom can erase it with a flick of his wrist. Or worse, he can take what Steve loves most, Peggy and their child, hostage. Imagine Doom appearing in that peaceful home, telling Steve that unless he joins him, that happy life evaporates from existence. No battle, no war, no second chances. Steve's greatest fear has always been losing people he loves. First Bucky, then Peggy, then the Avengers, and now a child he never expected to have. Doom doesn't need to overpower Captain America. He just needs to strike at Steve Rogers, the husband, the father, the man who finally has something to lose. Once Doom corners him emotionally, Steve's internal transformation begins. He opens that box containing the Captain America suit, not out of pride, but out of mourning. It's a symbol of everything he cannot be anymore. He knows that Captain America cannot stand beside Dr. Doom, but Nomad, a man without allegiance, without identity, without moral absolutes, can. Nomad operates in the gray, and that gray is exactly where Doom thrives. Steve doesn't become a villain. He becomes a survivor. He steps into Nomad because Nomad gives him the freedom to fight in a way Captain America never could. He becomes the shadow version of himself, willing to walk down darker paths if it means saving his family's existence. Marvel isn't just resurrecting Nomad for fan service, they're using the identity as a storytelling weapon. Because the moment Steve buries Captain America, he frees himself to make the one choice the world would never expect from the Sentinel of Liberty, joining forces with the man destined to end the Avengers. Their partnership isn't as random as it may seem. In the comics, Steve and Doom have crossed paths multiple times, often in uneasy alliances driven by necessity rather than trust. Doom respects Steve more than most heroes because Steve is unwavering, disciplined, and incorruptible. But Doom also knows that incorruptibility comes with a price. Once Steve's moral core is fractured, he becomes dangerously pliable. There was even a storyline where Doom manipulated alternate reality versions of heroes, shaping them into soldiers for his own multiversal wars. This is the perfect blueprint for what the MCU might be adapting. Doom doesn't need to brainwash Steve. He only needs to exploit his love, his guilt, and his sense of responsibility toward his family. And Steve, now existing outside the natural timeline, is more vulnerable than ever. When Doom looks at Steve Rogers, he doesn't see Captain America. He sees a weapon forged from righteousness and sharpened by grief. All these threads merge into a single, devastating conclusion. Steve Rogers will return in Avengers Doomsday not as captain, not as leader, not as hero, but as the emotional turning point that fractures the Avengers from within. Imagine the team facing Dr. Doom, only for Steve to step forward beside him. Imagine Sam Wilson watching the man who passed him the shield, now standing opposite him. Imagine Thor, Strange, Wanda, or whoever remains, hesitating in battle because they're not fighting a villain. They're fighting the man who once embodied everything they believed in. And that hesitation is exactly what Doom needs. Steve becomes the perfect psychological weapon. Not brainwashed, not mind-controlled, but bound by love and forced into the one role he never wanted, the enemy. As Nomad, he's not defined by loyalty to the Avengers anymore. He's defined by loyalty to the one thing Doom holds hostage, his family. And that sets the stage for one of the most emotionally shattering confrontations the MCU has ever built toward. And that is the full descent from hero to Nomad, from Avenger to Doom's unwilling ally. If this theory hits even halfway true, Avengers Doomsday may deliver the most heartbreaking Steve Rogers storyline ever put on screen. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dive movie theories. More cinematic secrets coming your way. Stay tuned.